Good morning. Do we have everybody there? I can't see everybody else. Let's see who's all on here. Um, well, for you that are just joining us, welcome. This is the first quarterly kind of cyber hot topic going viral with Jay. We have quite a bit of things to talk about today. I've been seeing a lot of information going on out there and working with some most of the banks as they're going through exam process. So I thought we'd start out each one of these quarterly broadcasts with just kind of what I'm seeing out there from examiners. Kind of what are their buttons? What are they looking for the use coming up for those of you that are coming up on maybe an audit in fourth quarter now. These are kind of the topics that they're kind of starting to push for. Then we're going to kind of outline I don't know if anybody's on that was affected by the attacks last year. There was quite a number of banks that were all affected by a malicious email that went out, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and how maybe we could have better been prepared for this. Then we're going to talk about some of the new business email compromises that we're seeing out there, and especially the use of AI, artificial intelligence, in very mischievous ways. And then call intercept and phone system exploits. And then we're going to kind of wrap up the whole thing with just kind of a communications hot topic, what to look for, how to better protect yourself, maybe 5 tips that you can spread throughout the bank going, hey, pay attention to these things. So with that, let's dig right into it and start working with some of the examiner hot topics. Big thing is securing data. They want you to be able to prove to them how you are securing data, and then not only securing the data, but how you're monitoring the securance of that data. So they're really kind of pushing for a SIEM system. Many of you have actually implemented one already, but for those that haven't, it's a secure information event management system that will tie log information from all different systems into one system and kind of give you a 10,000 foot view of what's going on in your network, and if anything is out of the ordinary, will alarm you of things going on. They're not mandating it yet, but they're really strongly suggesting that you have something in place. Just because it's too cumbersome to try to do it individually on every one of your systems that you have. Full active monitoring of all email accounts. This goes back to the email attacks that were last year. They've kind of really ramped up on with more and more people going to 365 and going away from their own hosted Exchange server. 365 malicious takeovers have been rampant. So they're really kind of monitoring of all email accounts. And then we're going to talk MFA enforced at all levels of the network. Now, they say they want MFA enforced at the admin level on everything, and now we're starting to see it at just about every level. They'd like to see MFA enforced all the way down to the domain level, and especially on anything hosted on the web. So if you're not looking at an MFA solution across the board, you might want to start looking for one. Next big outline is the incident response plans. We've all kind of had them now. They're starting to get very specific. And kind of the best solution I can find, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth on it, but is tie it back to your business impact analysis. So if you've already identified your business impact analysis for your business continuity plan, now you've identified maybe your top 10, top 15 critical business functions. Now they want an incident response or a plan written out as to how you would recover that business process in a timely manner. So it's just kind of taken that incident response plan to a whole new level. And it's kind of taken over where, maybe a DR plan was before. Now they're not saying that anymore, but, a business continuity plan is kind of taken over from one aspect of the DR plan. The incident response plan is how you're going to recover it. So they're really kind of ramping up on what your incident response plan looks like and how you're going about it. Data flow diagrams, they want to know where your data is at rest, how it's protected at rest, where it is in motion, moving between systems, computers. Is it leaving your network? How is it locked in and you are controlling access to it? So data flow diagrams is basically just an outline of where your data is at rest, in motion, and in storage or in backup. So those are the kind of the hot buttons. That's what they're looking for. And of course, you always have, vendor management. You can't possibly do enough on vendor management right now. They're really, really pushing that who your critical vendors are, and you've done enough research to know that you could replace them if you have to, or you're pretty secure in the fact that nothing is going to happen to those critical vendors. So I didn't put that one on the list, but that one continues to keep coming up. So we'll continue to keep talking about it. So the little talk about the 365 attack that happened last year. It looked legitimate. I think it was the early days of AI and how it was all put together, but it was discovered at a number of banks. The alarming thing is the email account that happened to be compromised at almost every one of these banks happened to be a global admin in 365. So what these attackers did was created their own user login, masked it so nobody would really see it, gave themselves global admin rights, and then just kind of monitored everybody's email. And kind of the alarming thing with it is they were on for a very long time, months. So before they acted and did anything, which is a little bit scary since, most of them have gone through audits and have seen this and was kind of actively monitoring those accounts, but really didn't know they were there. So really kind of how the whole thing kind of got started. An email came in, they clicked on it, it forced them into saying it was a secure email or whatever. They logged into their 365 account, they grabbed that user information and just went to town. Now, this all happened last year before Microsoft enforced their numeric double factor MFA. So now you have to put in a numeric code, which helped and would have helped prevent this. Kind of, we'll talk about a little how they're getting around MFA on the next few slides. But what they're doing is they're coming in and just bombarding that user until they finally just give up and say, yeah, that was me. So as soon as they do that, they created their own user accounts. They've discovered that they were global admins, they created their own user accounts, turned on or turned off MFA on that account. In most cases, we did find one that they left it on. So they actually had MFA on their own account. But so in other words, they created their own user accounts and then sat there. And just monitored everybody else's email to find out who the key players in that. And it didn't just affect banks. It affected a lot of businesses around too. But they figured out, what they were going to do, who they had to mimic, and who was in charge of the bank, or who in this case was in charge of wires. So yeah, that's how they got in, and that's how they stayed in. So the problems with MFA with 365, the initial one was, they didn't have the numeric passcode, but they just bombarded that account. Out of habit, you hit allow out of the session, and now that account is connected. Once they have it connected, they stay connected. Now, the other scenario is they keep bombarding credentials to notify the mobile accounts, and then you do not allow access but fail to realize the account credentials are still logged in, and the hacker contacts you via email, text, phone, claims to be from the provider, and they try to persuade you to say, yeah, that's supposed to be there, and go ahead and push the notification. Third one, which is kind of a little more scary, is it's a two-factor kind of cyber threat at this point. What they're doing is creating that phishing email, and then they're launching a man-in-the-middle attack between it. So they're forcing you to their real 365 authentication page. It looks normal. You log in thinking, yeah, this is how I have to get to the secure email or whatever they're asking for. The MFA turns on. It notifies you. You actually go through, because it is legitimate, click the MFA, and what they're doing behind the scenes is copying the cookie, because that's all the token really is for MFA, is saying, hey, all right, I'm going to save you down on my browser now to say, if you log in again, I'm not going to ask you for the authentication method because I know you just did. They have a way of grabbing that cookie information, putting it into their own browser, and just because you gave it your username and password, they have that. Using that cookie information in their own browser, they're able to log in and bypass the multi-factor authentication again. So that one's a little trickier and it's a little more scary, but they can do it, and it's not really that hard to pull off, especially with some of the new hacking tools that are available to the threat actors in the world. So in this case, what could have presented it? Geolocation. In most cases, they were coming in from overseas. So everything from, they're always masking their IP, so it looks like they're coming from wherever. But in most cases, we're seeing Sri Lanka, India, China, and the Philippines. So geolocation turned on so that you're only allowing geographic region or the continental United States from the ability to log into 365 would have helped prevent this. It would have slowed them down. They just would have masked a server sitting somewhere in the US. But they're always hanging for that low-hanging fruit, or they're always targeting that low-hanging fruit. So the less work they have to do, the better. Enhanced MFA at that time would have helped prevent a lot of these. Microsoft didn't release that until first quarter of this year or late last year. Could have been late fourth quarter last year, but that's where the numeric code comes into play. So what they're doing is before they just sent a push notification. Is that you? Yeah, that's me. Now they send the push notification, but then on top of it, you have to give it a numeric code to prove that it really is you. The other side of it, if you don't have push notifications turned on and had to do a numeric code, they wouldn't have been able to get around that one as either. So we're starting to see people go away from push notifications on MFA and going back to a code that you have to put in. It's a randomly generated code that keeps generating either on your phone or a key fob token. So we're starting to see a little bit more of that come into play. Limiting global admins. There was a big push on this last year. So if you are a global admin for your bank on 365, I hope that you are not using your normal username or normal email account as your global admin account. First thing that we started telling people to do is make sure your global admin doesn't even receive emails. So there's really no chance of your global admin accounts getting this phishing attack. On top of it, if you are forced to log in with a global admin account that is a fictitious name with something that looks like it could be a real name in your organization, but is kind of set aside and saying, hey, no user is really going to have this name. It'll make life a whole lot easier for you because now you're not tying it back to a specific user account. Same reason we don't use real domain users or your active user in your domain as an administrator account. The other side of this, a SIEM system in place that's monitoring 365 would have seen that a new user was created, elevated, or they would have been able to see that a new user was created and was given elevated privilege rights. They would have saw login information of who they were, where they were. So a SIEM system really would have showed what was going on in this place. So I can see why the examiners are really kind of pushing for a SIEM system. And there's a lot of legitimate reasons why you should be putting one in. They're not the cheapest thing in the world to do. So just keep that in mind. So in most business email compromises, they're targeting the same thing that we just saw in the bank. Now, they're not very, if it's a targeted thing, or if it's a targeted email where they're specifically going after a business, they're going to bombard them. If you just see the randomly generated phishing email that comes in, that's just, kind of a true phishing. They're just seeing what bites. But what they're doing is posing as, a supplier or a partner to that business, trying to find a way in that will give them kind of an inside track in it, or to find out who the key players in that business are. Once they're in, which, if you really look back on what was going on, they happen to find, if I'm going back to the Las Vegas attacks that are technically still currently going on, it wasn't a high-level person that they got the information from. It just happened to be one of the users at one of the casinos, and by doing back-end research on it, they were able to pose as that user, called the help desk for that casino, and they reset their password and information to let them in. That's scary enough, but once they got in, they started elevating their own privileges within the system, and were able to send basically ransomware out and let it spread throughout the entire network, and brought just about everything down. So it doesn't take an admin account a lot of times to do this. They can elevate their own privileges, or they can elevate the privileges of the account that they took over to do just enough malicious activities to get away with it. So yeah, the potential is massive, and what they're looking for is an easy target to come in. And in this case, it was, spiders that was saying they're behind it, but they're kind of after the glory. They just want to be as disruptive as they can, and they're happy to do it. So, and they split it out, and everybody in that organization kind of specializes in something else. So when you say it's not really a planned attack, it kind of is a planned attack, because they're spreading it amongst their friends going, hey, I think I can do this, and I can do this. And they just launch them all at the same time. So in other words, it's scary, the business compromises that are coming out there right now, which, are your customers. So you kind of have to watch what's going on. The ransomware attacks are one thing when they go in and start acting as, say, the president of the organization and saying, hey, we need to send this wire to such and such a place. They look legitimate. They're using a lot of AI-driven technology behind it to word these emails so that they truly do look authentic. So that's kind of where I wanted to go to next. And the use of artificial intelligence. Well, you know what? Let me take a step back. We just wrote an article on artificial intelligence, and I'm hoping y'all had a chance to read it, which really was kind of interesting, because we let AI write the article. And then we used AI to regenerate that article so that it was ready for print. Now, on the same note, I said, no, that's funny, but I took about 3 minutes and used AI to generate my own artificial intelligence driven, specifically asking for how it's being used maliciously against banks. And AI, and I don't know if it was a self-preservation thing, but decided that no, we're going to use it for the betterment of everybody, and saying, hey, we're going to use it from a threat standpoint, going, hey, we can use AI to actually find these threats a whole lot faster. And I'm going, well, that's not how the bad guys are using it. So I'm not really sure if AI was self-preserving itself, saying, no, it's all good. It's not. It's AI is being used throughout the entire threat industry right now to formulate specifically emails But they're getting the grammatical, spelling, punctuation, all those things that we used to be able to spot really easily in a phishing email. You can't really spot anymore, and they can make a match. They can make a match exactly what an email should look like, coming from Cisco, coming from HP, coming from Microsoft. They look legitimate. It's really hard to tell. So the natural phrasing and everything else is being used from an AI. They're using AI to generate a more natural phrasing. So it's really hard to tell. The ironic part is you can do this yourself in any language you want. It's kind of the newest stuff out there that, I mean, a lot of people are using. So on a side note, I hope you're generating a policy in the bank of how you are going to be specifically using AI. Even if you say you're not going to be using AI, I don't know that you can actually get away with that in a policy, because a lot of your sub applications or some of your customers are actually using AI behind the scenes. So you're going to need to formulate a policy on what the bank's stance is on using AI. So with AI using it that way, it tends to be, I look at it more from the malicious side of things than I do from the good side. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on AI, and I don't want to say that someday AI will take over the world, because I don't think it can, but it's kind of scary that it is so right so often. So, and if you haven't played with AI at all, I ask you to. I mean, there's some really good, ChatGPT and I use Shamrock and some of the other tools. They're pretty good. I mean, it's really kind of a time-saving thing. So there's no point in Googling anything anymore. You just throw it in a chat engine. You're going to get a ton of information on whatever topic you want. It's actually kind of fun. You can go down a rabbit hole with it, but it's really kind of cool. Kind of the one of the other things I want to say or talk about today are like call compromise. With kind of everybody moving to a fully hosted IP phone system, something that's hosted on the web. I mean, the tools that go along with it are absolutely phenomenal. You can install your phone system on your mobile phone and have it mimic your office phone and log into another PC. And it's really just an application that you log into, and your phone number will transfer with you wherever you go. The downside of that is if a hacker can get a hold of your information on your phone system, they can mimic your phone no matter where they are. So what we're starting to see is businesses getting compromised from somebody getting in, taking over a phone system. And, I always kind of equate it back to you're calling back on wires and notifications on ACH and what's going on. But if that person was compromised or their phone system was compromised and you're doing a callback verification and you call that number, the specific number that you have on record, and that happened to have been taken over, hope you have other verifications on top of that you're using. But we're seeing that. The other thing we're seeing is they get into a phone system and now they can start mimicking other phone numbers in the area. So they'll get into a phone system and then start randomly generating local numbers and using or spoofing the caller ID on them to make calls on the bank's behalf or on so-and-so's behalf, or making it look like there's somebody else. So we're starting to see a lot of call fraud going on out there. Don't necessarily know that there's an easy way to combat that, because if they, for instance, if you don't even have an IP-based phone system and a bad actor gets a hold of an IP-based phone and they mimic your main number of your bank and start making phone calls so that the call looks like it's coming from your bank, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So you can make it persistent, you can inform your customers, but they usually don't, they don't have your customer list. They're just calling random numbers within the community. So it makes it a little bit tough. So yeah, that's what's going on in the caller intercept world. The other side of it, and I have heard of some cases where they're calling and they're using an AI generated voice, which, I hate to say it, a lot of people have tons and tons of YouTube videos out there. So they're splitting those, and they can actually use AI to mimic the voice track patterns of the person that maybe they're trying to attack. And it really legitimately sounds like them. So yeah, beware of the phone systems out there. We all kind of got really excited that, hey, our phones can travel with us wherever we are. Well, these are the threats that came along with that. Multi-factor authentication. I think almost every one of the hosted phone systems right now, you can enforce MFA on all phone accounts. I highly suggest it. You want to try to lock it down as much as you can. Turn on geolocation so that accounts can no longer be attached to from outside of the US. And then limiting the functions. If that person doesn't ever need to have a phone on a computer, don't let them have a phone on a computer. If they can't use it outside, don't let them use the app. Don't let them use the, there's just, you just kind of create your own headaches the more you open up these systems. So yeah, beware, it's out there. We just talked a little bit about this. Most of the time the callers are coming in and they're looking for non-public information or private information. We've been really kind of straining this for years and years and years that we don't provide that type of information over the phone without knowing specific things. The problem is they're calling multiple times from multiple different numbers, and they're getting just little pieces of what they're after, and then they can start to put together and actually make call attempts at that point. They're very persistent. They have all the time in the world. I almost think this is kind of a game to them. I don't want to say this is their main, most hackers, this is not their main exploit. This is just something they're doing on the side. Just because it's really time consuming and it's really kind of complicated to get that out of it. So what I kind of want you to take away, we're running a little bit late on time, but I got a late start. Be cautious of all external communications, and almost be paranoid about them. Don't click on links. Don't click on links, especially from an email. I mean, if you're getting a request from 365 to log into it, don't click on that link. Just actually go into your 365 account and log in. Same goes for your voicemail system. Same goes for your phone system, anything else. Always verify the authenticity of the communication via trusted source. I mean, if you're not sure on it, check around, see if anybody else has gotten the same kind of strange phishing email. Normally, if you're getting hooked into a phishing campaign, it's going to find more than one email address because they're taking the emails from a known source, either your website if you're publishing them, and a lot of banks do. And I don't have an issue with it as long as the bank knows the risk in publishing their direct emails to their users. But that's usually where they're getting it from, or they're getting it from anything that people have signed up for. There's your emails are floating around out there, so just beware. Report that suspicious communication immediately to a supervisor, and especially to your security team. If there's something that they need to do to start blocking, they can go in and say, hey, no, we can block this at the 365 level or the Exchange level or whatever you're using for email. We can block things coming from that specific sender or on those specific keywords. And kind of most importantly, don't send sensitive information or sensitive communications via an unencrypted email. There's safe ways to send information, and I don't know that even encrypted email right now is 100% foolproof, especially with some of the way the 365 has been compromised or trying to be compromised most of the time right now. If it's linked into an Exchange account, technically you have access to, if that email is compromised, that user would have access to it. So unencrypted emails are kind of that high level, the bare minimum of what we need to do to help protect this data. But, beware of everything. Kind of hate to say this, but stay paranoid. Stay paranoid, and that paranoia will probably serve you well. So that's kind of it. I ran a little bit long. If you have questions, just email me. If you would like this slide deck, just send a quick email to me or contact Renee at the Minnesota Bankers Association. You can always reach me at 952-857-2617, or my cell phone that I think most people have is 952-210-0097. Best way to reach me is usually on cell phone. But I usually try to get back on emails at least 3 times a day if I'm not constantly looking at it. So with that, thanks for joining me for this first kind of, and I don't know if going viral is really what we want to call this. I don't know, maybe paranoia is maybe the right term. But thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day.